Doc, how are you, sir?
Very fine,
So,
thank you.
I want to introduce you to the world, Dr. Stephen Haessler. So, real quick, just we talked about what's your degree on?
Okay, so when I was teaching at an all boys school in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, I was teaching economics, advanced placement, micro, advanced placement, macro. And one afternoon, a kid asked me a question that I couldn't answer. So
I
I
haven't
said,
seen that happen since.
so I said, I need to go back to school.
Really?
So I decided to get a doctorate in urban education, curriculum and instruction, and with a minor in economics. So I took education courses, which were, for the most part, pretty horrible, and a lot of economics courses, which were very enjoyable. But I answered that student's question at the time. I said, I know enough to know that that's a really good question, but to be honest with you, I don't know the answer yet. But by tomorrow morning or tomorrow afternoon, when we have class again, I'll have a tentative answer for you. And so I did, but it was good to go back to school. I had to get up at 3:30 a.m. every morning for about 2 years because I had crappy math background. So for all these calculus-based courses in economics, I had to know advanced math. So I taught myself arithmetic, algebra, geometry, trigonometry, calculus.
Oh my God,
So I could
man.
be ready.
All fueled by this one question.
Yeah.
What was your passion? So the reason you went back to school was your passion just in education, and that question just said, "I need to go gain more knowledge." Is that what?
Yeah, that was it. Because I felt the school, that was a private school. The parents were paying a lot of tuition,
Right.
and I figured they deserved quality quality stuff. So I thought it's really important to keep up, not only keep up with your field, but to keep growing. In that way, you can model what you want students to do, which is to embark on a lifelong learning journey. That doesn't necessarily, for me, it was formal education. That doesn't mean that everybody needs to go back to school, but it does mean that I think a healthy person who's alive from the neck up wants to learn, continuously learn, no matter what age,
Correct.
no matter what stage of career they're in. Keep learning, that kind of thing. So
That's phenomenal. So because, but well, I like one thing that you hit on is like it doesn't have to be formal education always. Like so, the hunger for knowledge doesn't mean that you have to enroll in what's called traditional education. I think that nowadays, education has taken so many different forms, right?
yeah,
It's the knowledge it's out there. It's on the internet, and you can purchase books, you can read papers, you can watch very intelligent and very well put together videos on just about every topic that you would like. But the second you stop learning, it's I think that's the second that you stop growing, you stop living. But it's funny because also I think that's a trait that happens to men at an older age, where all of a sudden, like I've heard that joke where, you're trying to introduce somebody to an older person. They're like, I know everybody I need to know already,
yeah,
and they so
yeah.
people check out, and but it's not just the older person. It's like sometimes you find this young man that just, they're done. I don't know what is it about them that has killed that fire of progress,
Yeah.
and it's just, and they just stop growing. But the knowledge is there. It's I wanted to hit a topic about like phones, right? Because that's like the easy thing criticized nowadays. The phones, right? You're always on your phone. You're always on your phone. And somebody wanted to post it. Somebody posted a picture of like this group of kids, and every kid is on their phone. Somebody very smart went back and found a picture from like 1940s, and every man was on their newspaper. Nobody was talking to anybody.
Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
was just a form. So I guess my point is, your phone would reflect who you are. If Because you hear people complain about Facebook, right? And you hear people complain about Instagram, and I only see negative stuff and the drama. I'm here to tell you, your phone is a reflection of who you are. Your phone is a reflection of who you are, and they're called smartphones for a reason. You can like, you can dislike, you can filter what you want your phone to show you. Hell, you can unfriend, you can unfollow a person if this is all they bring to your life. Done. And we have no obligation to carry those people in our lives. But I love my phone. I love my phone, and I love the fact that my kids are on their phone. And in fact, I encourage them to be on their phone in a positive manner. Because whenever so whenever because both of my kids, and we engage in this very intricate conversations in just about every topic. And whenever we reach a point of I don't know, what was the answer back in the day? When you read something that you don't know, that's what we had, encyclopedias.
Right. Yeah. I like what you said about the upside of technology today. Years ago, I remember I would subscribe to this magazine called The Economist. It comes from Great Britain, and they did a 150th anniversary issue. So they'd been around for a long time, and this was 1990 or so, I think, thereabouts. And I remember reading through it, and this one article in particular by Diane Ravitch said that in the next 150 years going forward, probably what's going to happen is that I'll use some jargon and then define it.
Yeah.
The scarcity of resources, of educational resources, is going to diminish tremendously. Meaning, in plain speech, we're going to have access to information like we never dreamed of. It's not going to be that difficult to get at new information or the right, like who was that actor in that series
There it
we
is.
were looking
Yeah.
at? Boom, we can find that out. To me, that's thrilling. That's exciting. The challenge, and Diane Ravitch mentioned this in her article, the challenge is going to be motivation. So if you can learn, differential equations any time of the day or night, if you're determined, if you're like a Abraham Lincoln self-taught guy,
right? Yeah.
you can go on, you can do that. But what's the motivation to do that? What's the motivation for young boys and girls in school, who don't see the meaning or so? To me, there is an upside to the technology, just like you're saying. I like my phone. It's a navigator. My God,
It's
if
everything.
you go to Best Buy or something and add up all the gadgets that you have in a phone nowadays, it's amazing.
Yeah.
A compass, a map, a telephone, a camera, a movie
Calculator,
camera,
right?
a calculator. All these
An
all
album,
these tools.
right?
Yeah.
An album. It used to be that I remember my parents visiting somebody and bringing three or four albums because they were going to talk about somewhere that we went.
Yeah.
And now it's, hey, let me show you.
So to me, it's a tool, and like any tool, it can be misused. If you hit somebody in the head with a hammer, an innocent person, that's a bad use of that tool.
Correct. Yeah.
But you can also build a house or build a new shed or a tool shed or something. So definitely, I agree with you that there is an upside to technology, as long as it's not abused.
Right.
But it can be a very productive and useful tool.
So you're still teaching courses, right?
Yes, yeah.
What's do you feel so being plugged into the world of teaching young men and women? Do you feel that there's a lack of enthusiasm for the gaining of knowledge? Is it, or is it just as passionate as it once was?
I think it's as passionate as it was. I think to be a young person today, they want to know. They want to know, and the thing about the reason I like high school age students is they have great crap detectors. If you try and pull one over, if you're not honest, like with that kid years ago, they liked that. My class liked the fact that I admitted, okay, I don't know, but I'll get the answer.
Mm-hmm.
So they like that. They'd rather have that than some guy, making up stuff.
BS your way through the answer, right?
Exactly. So, so my experience with young people today is that they really want to know. They want to know what's important. They want to know about cryptocurrencies or Bitcoin. They want to know that. And what do I need to know to navigate life?
Mm-hmm.
What is really important information? So I don't sense any kind of diminishment of that passion in that age group. You know, freshman, sophomore, junior, senior in high school.
Okay.
They really want to know. Now, are are there motivational issues? Of course,
Right.
but it's
But it's also that age, right? It's
yeah.
also that age where you get pulled in so many different directions. Yeah.
Exactly. You know, you're
It's
changing.
difficult. Yeah.
You're changing. Your interests are like intense this week, and then dead the next week on that. I don't care about that anymore.
Right.
I'm on to this new thing. So there's that. But that's as old as the hills, I think. But
Yeah. So the motivation is there. Um, why? And I'm not speaking based on I'm speaking based on the statistics. Why are American students not so interested anymore in sciences and careers or fields that once were dominated by America? So, for example, like mathematics, like science.
that's a very good question. I don't know the answer, but I have a couple of hunches, and here are a couple of hunches.
Yeah,
One is that engineering and science, what is it, STEM, the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, those disciplines are not easy. They're hard. And as a leader in martial arts, you know that hard work is not popular.
right.
You gotta make it. You gotta build in people a desire to work hard. Maybe I don't know if that you think that's a
Yeah,
fair statement, but
absolutely.
why aren't more Americans going into science and math? I think they are, but it's a low number, maybe percentage wise, because there's so many alternatives, and the soft science, like
Yeah.
sociology or economics or something.
Yeah.
Well, econ has got a lot of math to it, but let's say communications or something. I don't mean to denigrate those fields. I'm sure they're fascinating, but when you have a choice, what do you want to do? Like 50, 60, 70-hour weeks taking hard engineering courses, or be able to party and take communication courses that are like slow balls through the strike zone. What
Right.
would you do?
Yeah.
A lot of people, maybe most people, would head over to those easier courses so they can have a life and do fun things on the weekends and maybe even during the week. But there are still people in this country, and people who I believe should come into this country from other countries, other
Right.
cultures,
Yeah.
who want to take the hard path and who want to learn engineering because they have a passion for that and they love that. And so the question, I think, what can society do? What can mom and dad do to cultivate that, to reverence, to respect the idea of hard work?
Right.
So the hard road might be the better road. It's not always the easy road that's better.
And but I think that what we're lacking sometimes, and I think that I consider myself blessed, is for whatever reason the good Lord always put role models in front of me in whatever it was that I wanted to do. There always was somebody there that was willing to give me a little push in the right direction. I'll give you an example. Just everybody knows my role models in wrestling, my role models in jiu-jitsu, that I've been able to meet and continue to be inspired by them. But one of my greatest role models was, I had two in high school. One of them was and I can't remember his name, but he was he had to be like my world history teacher, and I had enough knowledge in English to understand majority of the thing he said to me. I couldn't put a sentence together back then to save my life. But during so my first year in high school I had something like 3 classes that were mandated to take, which was like earth science, world history, that kind of stuff, which oddly enough, even though I was failing that class because of the language, now I'm passionate to learn about history. But back then we had a parent teacher conference, and he knew how hard I was struggling to make the grades, to make the homework. I would sit there with my school book, and then I would sit there with the dictionary, and just whenever I caught onto a word that I didn't understand, help it, translate it. But it was very difficult. It was very difficult and sometimes frustrating. And I'll be the first one to tell you, there's times when I had enough, and I walked away from the work and didn't get it done. But he told, we were having a parent teacher conference, and I remember him coming to me and saying, "I want your mom here," you know. So I was like, "Oh shit, I'm in trouble," But he brought my mom, and he spoke very slowly, and he spoke in words that I was able to figure out and translate. But he told my mom that he was just like my kids are. He was first generation American from an Italian family
Okay.
that came with no English, that came without any education, and made it work. And he put that seed in me that that people can come from other countries and make this nation great. You know, this family that came from Italy, they came, and I guarantee you, they pushed and motivated your son to go get an education, become a teacher, and later on mold kids like myself. People for America seems to forget that they owe a great deal to immigrants,
Oh
and
yeah.
we don't have to go that far back.
Yeah.
Werner von Braun, creator of the work for NASA,
Yeah.
Albert Einstein,
Right.
Germans,
Yeah.
Germans, von Braun working for the Nazis before he came over. All that seemed to have been forgotten. How this immigrants came and really tipped the scale over to the Allied side with
Yep.
their development in science. But it's not just that. It's you can just continue to see this wave of immigrants that just continue to make America great, because that's what they do. They want to come into this country. There's something about America, and I can't quite pinpoint where it begins, how it's maintained, how it's continued to be bred. But America is one of those few countries in the world where you come in, you work hard, you're willing to do the work, your dreams can come true, and you decide how far you want to go. However, at the same time, America seems to have this sentiment to them where, at the same time, it's every once in a while, these waves of ignorance just take over, where all of a sudden English should be our only language, or only American traditions should be observed. And I don't think immigrants want to come over and say, "Hey, we should celebrate um, Mexican independence." No, but I should be able to celebrate the independence of the country where I was born and where I was raised.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, you see this, and this one really gets me, is when they tie your level of intelligence with the way you speak English, and sometimes they mock it, and you hear the mocking where a person is struggling to speak English, yet this person is a freaking doctor in their nation.
Exactly.
You know,
Yeah.
this person is a physicist in their nation that just don't have a dominance in the language, so they sound what America considers dumb.
Yeah.
And you see that mocking, and that one sends me through the roof. You know, but my wife was showing me this video of a young immigrant doctor that is one of the leading doctors in brain surgery that came to America as a young kid, worked in the fields, put himself through school, and then eventually actually gained his education. And I think he travels back and forth between the Mexico and the U.S. doing surgeries on both sides. But if you listen to him by the American standards, he sounds like a farmer, right? And
Sure.
you hear that mocking, and it's like, "Hey, good morning." That one, it just pisses me off.
Yeah.
But I just wish America could get past that, because America is one of the few countries where we only speak one language. You see people from Europe, and they speak Arabic, they speak English, they speak French, and they didn't even go to school
Yeah.
to pick up the language. It's just in your neighborhood, there's kids that speak those languages, and you want to play with them, and your parents haven't taught you to hate immigrants, so you end up picking up those languages.
Yeah. The whole question of immigration to me is should I talk about that? Okay, but
Swing at it.
it's
Yeah.
to me it's one of the most important issues, and there are things that concern me as I look around about my country, and things that I'm very encouraged. The bottom line, it seems to me, is that the founding fathers and mothers of this country came up with a really attractive set of ideas. That idea that all men are created equal, and that, as you said, through hard work you can. And as long as the society respects if you're going to take a risk, if you're going to start a business, and you're willing to put up, capital for that purpose, and you if it doesn't work, boom, okay, I don't blame anybody. It was my decision.
I own it, yeah.
But if you are successful, then you get to keep the rewards as well. So if you're willing to risk that. So I think that's the genius of the American idea that people are attracted to. They want to come here and they want to experience that and do that and live their life in that kind of a system. As a conservative Catholic Republican, I think it's crazy to say we want to limit how many family people can come into this country, extended family. We want merit-based immigration. To me, that assumes that we can pick in a list of individuals from different countries. We can pick the next Einstein. We can pick the next Steve Jobs. We can pick the next Elon Musk. We can't do that. Government certainly can't do that. It can't
Right.
balance its books. So I say, let them in. Let them come in. Every country has the right to limit how you can't just
Can't have open borders, right? Yeah.
But let them come in if they have an uncle or something. We can't know who's going to be hardworking and discover a cure for a disease or something. Right. We can't know that.
But you're a product of your environment, right?
Yeah.
You're a product of your environment. And moving to America, to me, was one of the most inspiring experiences that I possibly could ever have, because in Mexico, it's people laugh about it, but in Mexico, I was determined that I was going to be a pro wrestler, because it's number one, it spoke to me. It was a way of continuing my passion for wrestling competition. But short of that, in the same community where I lived, in one single house, there was a family it was mom, dad, it was two older kids that had a degree in engineering, and a younger kid that was my age. One of them had their wife and they had a kid, and there were just no jobs in Mexico, and the economy was tanking, and the rich keep getting richer, the poor keep getting poor, and there's no middle economy. But yet you come to America and it's like, oh man, it's there for the taking. It's there for the taking. And maybe there was a time where America bragged a little bit more about its achievements, but it wasn't just America. It was more of the, look what America society can offer you, regardless of your background.
Well, and we need these people. We need them. It's not just a question of being nice, and oh yeah, sure, we'll let you in. But I don't like the nativist thing. I don't like the English only. Why can't the ability to speak more than one language be regarded as a national treasure and strength? Right. If my daughter, who's quadrilingual, makes fun of me because dragging my knuckles with monolingual.
You're
I can only
so
speak
primitive,
one
Dad.
language. Yeah, but I mean, that should be a great strength. It shouldn't be ridiculed because somebody has an accent. In church, we have visiting priests from other countries, from India and from the Philippines or so, and I like what one priest said. He said, "Look, okay, I have an accent. Okay, I will speak slowly in an effort to be understood. You must listen carefully so that you understand me."
Right.
I love that, because that's what communication is. If you want to understand somebody, you'll find a way. You'll find a way. Yeah. And so we should be encouraging for people who are learning the language to welcome them.
Yeah.
When I experienced that on the street or anything, I say, "Oh, you speak English very well," But,
yeah, you encourage it.
Yeah.
You encourage it. Yeah. Whenever, because I remember that challenge, right, when you just start becoming fluent in English. Yeah. And then sometimes people would want to start, when they heard me struggle, they would switch to Spanish.
Yeah.
I already spoke Spanish. I'll be like, no. You're fluent in English. Help me. Speak to me in English.
Yeah.
Help me. If you see me get stuck, then help me over that barrier. But help me do it. So it was so I find that I find that very encouraging that like when we have parents come in and you hear them with an accent, I see them struggle, but I don't switch unless they really get stuck, and then I help them out.
Okay.
But I think it's phenomenal. I think it's phenomenal. My mom will tell you stories in the most horrible broken English, but she'll have you laughing.
Yeah.
And she's 60, no, 70, 73 years old.
Oh,
73 years
God
old.
bless her.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's I think we have a beautiful society. We just need to celebrate our differences that make us more united
Yep.
instead of allowing that to separate us.
I completely agree. And the tendency for increased border security, no, we don't want extended family immigration. This crazy idea that my political party of preference is dabbling with. Um, you get that nativist mentality that okay, we came here, my parents came here, we made it. Now that's enough.
Right.
No, it doesn't work that way.
Right.
You need to be open in order for a society like your mind. We were talking about education and the lifelong learning and the desire to learn, whether formal or informal education. You need to be open, and our society needs to be open-minded to the possibility, to the power of people who come here because they want to, and they want to contribute. Nobody wants to live off of others. People, especially young people, come and they want to contribute.
Yeah. The greatest gamble is to gamble on people.
Yeah.
But that's the one that gives you the most reward. That's the one that where you gamble on somebody and it pays off. That's the most beautiful thing ever. That's
Amen.
the most beautiful thing
Yep.
ever. So you mentioned Bitcoin, and that's something that I've had a lot of questions because Bitcoin it's the talk, right? And I have a couple of friends that are trying to get me to invest on it, and I think that's kind of where a lot of people are getting caught up by the romanticized idea of something that you can invest right now in and make millions of dollars later on. But you had like a very alarming no as soon as I asked you.
Yeah.
So Bitcoin started in 2009, and it has a lot of appeal because I think it's a little bit of like the disenfranchised groove sector, the people that want to use Bitcoin, because number one, it's anonymous to a certain degree.
Sure. Yeah.
Number one, it's anonymous. Number two, it's not tied into any regulations whatsoever. It's not tied to a government. There's no government regulation worldwide, except for a couple of countries that are trying to regulate it. There's certain businesses that are starting to take it, like Amazon takes Bitcoin,
Sure.
Xbox takes Bitcoin. So there's the lure of this is the new gold, right? This is the new gold, but it's not. It's not. So what are your thoughts on that? If you could just educate all of us on this.
Yeah. It comes down to a question, the way I look at it, it comes down to a question is, are cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin is one, but there are others. There are other different cryptocurrencies that are based on, I forget what it's called, the chain, the computing stuff that's behind Bitcoin. The question, though, is the most important question is Bitcoin a currency? Does it have the characteristics of a currency, a stable currency, or is it a speculative asset, like tulips in Europe in the 16th century, like the dot-com companies in the early 2000s, like stocks in the 1920s?
Right.
So we have. And the reason I'm leery about cryptocurrencies as a vehicle, I'm not closed off. I don't think we're there yet to having a cryptocurrency function as a currency. What is a currency? It's anything that's accepted as a medium of exchange, a store of value, and a measure of value. That's what money is in the textbooky way. So, is Bitcoin money in that sense? I'm not sure. I know that it resembles kind of a bubble, an asset bubble, like the tulip craze in Europe and in Holland, like the South Sea bubble, all these bubbles. And what a bubble is and you can see it kind of in the Bitcoin price volatility. It reached a maximum. I mean, people who got in early are happy,
Right.
but a lot of them have gotten out. And so who's gonna keep the underlying value? What is the underlying value of Bitcoin? Is there anything? Like when we were on a gold standard, gold was the measure of what a dollar would buy.
Right.
So there's a very famous economist, Vernon Smith, who pioneered this experimental economics field, in which he goes into a laboratory and pays people money to do things, these ultimatum games, and his work has really verified that there's some irrational stuff behind what people do in bubbles. For example, they have 15 trade periods, and they simulate this, and they're using real money. And in 15 rounds of trading, they'll start with an underlying asset that's worth, I don't know, $1, let's say. And then they have this intrinsic value. What is this thing going to be over the life of that traded, those trades? Let's say it's $10. So economic theory would say no sane person would put more than $10 on there because it's not worth it economically. But in an asset bubble, people are willing to pay more than the intrinsic value, the underlying value of that asset. In this case, Bitcoin.
Right.
So they'll pay $16, $20, $25 for a $10, asset.
Right.
To own that, even though they know that we're in round 12 and there are 3 more rounds left, and then it's going to go down to $1. So you're still buying and selling and so on. So the gyrations of the secondary market are bidding up the price, and even though it's out of whack with the underlying value. So what concerns me about Bitcoin is, what is the intrinsic value? We don't know. I can't know that. Like when you buy a share of stock, you're buying like Facebook. I was happy because I bought Facebook kind of early on at $20. Now it's $180 a share. So my 10 shares are doing okay.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, absolutely.
But I have a feeling that I understand something about what the underlying value of Facebook is. It's the network. It's the news feed. It's the the social networking, staying in touch with friends on different parts of the world, and so on. And that has some value. So I feel like I understand that. With Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies in general, I don't see anything other than a speculative bubble. That idea that people are willing to come in, the early hysteria, like, whoa, I gotta buy Bitcoin, and
Right.
people who are hawking it and selling it, you gotta get on it now. This is only
They
the
start
beginning.
mining, right?
Yeah.
Mine is like this craziest thing where,
Yeah.
same thing. People are agreeing that all of a sudden this Bitcoin is being created.
Yeah. Now, at the end of the article that I brought over for you, they do suggest that maybe a cryptocurrency that was tied to global GDP, gross domestic product,
That would make sense.
some underlying value, maybe the technology of Bitcoin combined with a different underlying intrinsic value, maybe that would work.
Well, so are they suggesting a worldwide currency?
It could be, it could be.
Huh. That is interesting.
Yeah.
That would be crazy.
Yeah.
But you mentioned the agreement that at some point when our finances were tied to the worth of gold, and at one point America said, okay, we're no longer tied to that. Are we not doing the same as cryptocurrency, where if our dollar system, if our dollar value is not tied to gold, to something that we can touch, we're just kind of agreeing that America is worth this much based on if it's an investment and it's investment. I can't even say it, investments. In its the strength of its industry or whatever it is. Are we not kind of just playing with that same bubble to a certain degree?
You raise a good point, and they're going off the gold standard was,
Was it a mistake?
I think so. I think
Okay.
gold standard. I've resisted this for many years, and I'm losing the argument against the gold standard. I think a gold standard is the closest thing to an honest money system that we could come to. and it would be possible to return to a gold standard. You'd have to get an agreement and so on. But you're right. What gives a dollar value right now is the fact that the government says this is
how much
our
it is.
currency, and people are willing to accept it in settlement of debts and transactions and so on. But the what the dollar will buy is being debased by monetary officials, by our government, because they want to protect us from inflation, so they'll crank out more money, which
makes our
exacerbates-
dollar worth less.
Yeah. So and they can get away with it because no one knows really what the underlying value of the dollar is, other than our willingness to accept it.
Right.
So is it a store of value? Yes, but it's losing value. Is it a measure of value? Sure. Most of the things, like how much is that mic, how much is that soda, we can state it in dollars and cents. And it's accepted as a medium of exchange. So it functions like money in the economy, but
But it's just a bunch of people just agreeing that, okay, this is how much this dollar is.
Yeah.
But you're having nations that are starting to say, no, your dollar is not worth as much as it was.
yeah, to me, what's fascinating about economics is that your ancestors in the University of Salamanca, Spain, 200 years before Adam Smith was born, the so-called founder of economics, a bunch of Dominican priests and Jesuits and others who looked at these questions about money, and the king at the time, who was debasing the currency, they would say, because he's printing too many, bills or whatever,
Right.
and he's debasing it. So thinkers and commentators, in this case priests and brothers, were criticizing what the king was doing to the currency by eroding the purchasing power of the currency, which was putting hardships on subjects and peoples
Right.
in the country. So this is not new. It's been going on for centuries. That's why, in part, I would favor like a return to the gold system, because that holds even government officials accountable. Like Congress would have to, if it didn't balance the books, then it would have to suffer the consequences in terms of what would happen to the currency, the exchange rate of the currency. So we'll see. It's hard to put money and honesty together.
So the problem is that we keep playing this game of both parties just failing to agree on a budget, and you see it every couple of years. Same thing. There's no budget. Run out of money. What do? We keep raising the debt ceiling, and it's just happened again. And all they have to do is to just threaten to shut down the government, and they'll shut down the government for a day or two, and people start freaking out. You start getting phone calls from unions, and that seems to be the answer over and over again. I don't think we can keep doing that. I think at some point, like, we just need to start holding people accountable for where's the money going. Do we need to be spending this much money on this and on that? And I think that a lot of times the people that pay for it is the people that need it the most, meaning after school programs, meaning aid for, all this assistance for our society that really do need it. But government spending on its own, it's out of control.
Yeah, and this recent budget that the 2-year budget does seem to be something that we can't afford as taxpayers.
Right.
It exceeds what the government would take in tax revenue. So I'm concerned about that.
Are we heading towards the next depression again? I mean, we hit one in 2008, right? We hit one in 2008, and I know many friends that lost their home. They just had to move out. They couldn't afford it, so people started just renting homes. And it happened. We barely managed to sustain our home because we, as a police department, started doing furloughs.
Oh.
So I mean, it hit everybody. But it just seems, again, it just seems that there's really nobody. There's no overseeing body holding our government accountable, saying, okay, children, you two need to sit down and you need to work it out.
Yeah.
What happens when the parents are the ones that are out of control, and you're the teenager son that is looking, going, "Fuck, my parents are out of control.
Well, we're coming back around to reality as I remember it. I mean, for the last almost a decade, we've had a policy of near zero interest rates, government, monetary policy of near zero interest rates.
What does that mean?
Well, okay, so the Federal Reserve increased the money supply and bought up lots of debt, and as the Federal
Was that the bailouts? The bailouts are
that was
referring
part
to?
of it,
Okay.
yeah, and toxic assets and so on. They took those off the books and so on. To me, capitalism works if you enjoy the good times and suffer some of the pain during the down times. Then it works. But if you try to prevent bad things from ever happening, you're going to create a bigger problem. So for the last 10 years, zero interest rates. And the reason that that's kind of bizarre is businesses don't know what a benchmark is. What's a benchmark? In other words, how do you advance in the martial art or in a martial art? You benchmark. You said, okay, that guy is more experienced. He's better than me. He can last longer on the mat or what.
Right.
So I gotta figure out what he's doing. So you measure your progress that way. And with the government with zero interest rates, it makes it very difficult to decide what something is worth. So if interest rates are zero, and you and I want to open up a pizza joint, how do we know whether that's economic or not? We could, under normal times, we could take, let's say, $100,000 and say, okay, we could get 2% return on our money if we, with profit and all that kind of stuff, estimated in the pizza business. But in long bonds, government bonds, if they're paying 5%, which was not unusual in the past before the previous decade, you'd say, well, heck, we could take that 100,000 and make 5% rate of return rather than risk it in pizza. The point is that people had some benchmark rate to measure economic decisions. If that pizza joint made 6 or 8% rate of return, holy mackerel, then yes, let's do it. Why? Because it's economic to do so. We can do better in our pizza joint than we can in the bond market. And so the bond market is starting to come back. You see the Federal Reserve slowly increasing interest rates. I think slow is good because you don't want to jar people.
Right.
And some inflation is showing some signs of life again. So it seems to me that we're returning to normal economic times where it's going to be harder to pull the wool over people's eyes.
Okay, good. So we're not headed towards another Great Depression. Could be.
I don't know. That's beyond me.
There's just people that obviously, I believe that every opinion has, there's a group of people that are benefited by it, right? But there seems to be a group of people that are very much into promoting that, hey, the next global financial crisis is coming. What are you doing to prepare yourself?
Well, I could sit here and say, Manny, something really bad is going to happen
Right.
in the future, and I would be right. I would be 100%
Well, at some point,
right.
yeah.
Yeah. But to me, what I hope is that our institutions, which are, many times stupid, but many times do some good things,
Right.
Largely by accident. But I hope that they can get to the point that they, come up with solutions to real problems before they overwhelm the institution, like the recession of 2008 and 2009. That was really here in particular in Tucson. In other parts of the country, not so much.
Yeah. Well, Tucson is not very affluent, financially speaking. There's not a lot of jobs. There is, and they keep getting threatened by there's 2 institutions in Tucson that employ a large number of people that every so often they're like, hey, we're thinking about leaving, and it just sends the entire town into panic. Raytheon
and DM.
Yep, Davis Mountain Air Force, right? Huge sources of income for Tucson. So if those 2 are ever to move, it would I think Tucson would just collapse, which would be very, very scary. But one thing I wanted to ask you about is the word very often used by our government officials of we created this many jobs, right? So you hear government officials kind of brag about, well, our economy is growing because we created 10,000 jobs nationwide in this first quarter. And you explained it to me, but I want to pass that on again to the public. What does that mean when the government says we've created 10,000 jobs?
I have no idea what they mean by
Yeah,
that. Uh, here's what I understand. What I think they mean is that these policies that we have implemented have resulted in the private sector, businesses and so on, expanding their payrolls. That's what I think they mean, but they want to claim credit for it, like, hey, vote for
right.
us because next time around because our policies have created jobs.
I think during our last conversation, it was more hinted towards the government creating governmental jobs
Ah,
to employ people. But we talked about that our economical system is not really made to be sustained by the government expanding its labor base. It's based on industries, whether it's sole proprietorship or large industries,
yeah,
growing
yeah.
again.
Uh, where I'm coming from is I believe generally that the private sector, that a private individual, business owner, is probably more skilled and adept at spending a dollar than is a government agency.
Right.
Because what's the difference? A private sector person has the bottom line. If they're doing something that works, he or she will know it. They will know because they're taking in a little bit more than they're shelling out.
Right.
So there's and they have hard costs. If that's their budget, and that's it, and they can't go beyond it. It's a hard budget. Government, it's not that they don't have limits on what they can do. It's just that they're different. So there isn't profit and loss statements in government. Uh, there's accountability to the voters eventually, but that's 4
Later,
years,
things
6
have to
years
be. I
off.
mean, the palace has to be on fire.
Yeah,
By,
right.
yeah.
But is this budget, zero-based budgeting, all that kind of stuff? No. Okay, your budget next year will be increased by, no matter whether you're doing it better or not, you get a bump in your budget. So, in other words, it seems to me that those countries that I'm not against government. Of course, we need government for two major reasons, at least two major reasons. One is national defense, and the other one is I don't want privatization of the rule of law. Justice and the courts and law enforcement and so on. That shouldn't be for hire,
Right.
So that the private sector can't do because it can't because those are public
It
goods.
starts where it starts raising the question of, for example, I think that one of the biggest scandals with private industries is that at some point there was a promise of from the government to this private entity saying, hey, we're going to produce you 80,000 inmates for you to be in contract with. What does that mean? Are you saying that at all costs we're going to produce 80,000 criminals or people labeled as criminals who serve time in your facility? When you have incarceration as a profit, that's dangerous.
Yeah, I'd be open to see if some experiments have worked in that. But yeah, I think well, definitely you don't want a private business. I mean, you have lawyers for hire and so on, but I wouldn't want judges working for private companies and all that
Right.
kind of stuff. So there are some things that government just has to do. So I'm not anti-government. I just think that given a choice between another dollar spent on private sector or public sector or government, and so I think we'll get more out of the dollar spent by private
By the
citizens.
private sector.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
Okay.
No, I agree
So
with you, yeah.
so get into that question. Going back to that question about government creating jobs, there are a lot of jobs in government that I think are absolutely essential: law enforcement, national defense, Army, Navy, all the armed services that protect us, and the rule of law. But beyond that, what really does government have to do that can't be done more efficiently, better than the private sector?
By private, right.
Yeah, I mean, what about the poor? long before the federal government existed, the church was taking care of the poor. Now, people could argue that it's gotten out of hand, and the numbers are such that we need government. I'm not opposed to government assistance. I'm just saying, you know, jobs are the best anti-poverty program you can imagine. A growing, vital, strong economy is the best anti-poverty program I know of. So the question is, what policy mix creates that? So can government promote employment by hiring people? I'm leery of that. Can government be concerned with, you know, making the economy healthy and robust and breathing with both lungs and that kind of stuff and moving around? I think so. I think there are better policies than others. I like pro-growth policies. The last tax bill was that good? I hope so, in the sense that it will help families with a little extra money. It's definitely going to help some corporations, but you know, corporations do well by doing what people want them to do. I mean, is Facebook doing what people want them to do? Is iPhone doing what they want? So far, yeah. And the genius of business, it seems to me, is, you know, Steve Jobs and those other guys, God rest his soul, knew that I wanted an iPhone before I knew what an iPhone was. You know,
Isn't that like the model that they always say? Give the people what they want before they know they want it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's genius. That's genius. So anything that helps people like that are gifted with that vision, with that knowledge, like, you know, okay, here we are now, but I want to be there in 5 years or so. That's a gift that I think is a national treasure. And that's the genius of America. Another genius, people like that seem to want to come here. Right. And we don't want to turn that off. We need them.
But we're just creating such a bad reputation for America. And I want to bring it down to like a smaller sector, right? Sure. So for example, just in Arizona, we've had laws that just kind of like leave you scratching your head. And for example, at one point, like SB 1070, okay, very poorly written in its original language, downright racist. From a law enforcement perspective, I wasn't very informed about it, so I was kind of like, you know, I don't know if this is if it's breaking, if the presence of somebody here that I come in contact because they're already breaking some other law, some other violent law, then that's something else that we can do to protect our society, sure, right? But it eventually was redacted, and it's pretty much a useless bill that causes a lot of unnecessary work on law enforcement. It's ridiculous what law enforcement has to do with an enforceable law. A lot doesn't need to be there, but it just, I remember talking to people that you know, family members, let's say from Sonora, for me, and I'd be like, hey, are you guys coming over for Christmas or whatever? And they're like, fuck that. They're like, I don't want to be, out of fear, out of frustration, out of this specific statement was said, is like, I don't want to be driving around going to the mall while my wife is shopping with my birth certificate, my passport, my this, my that, and just have to hand a booklet of information to a police officer that can stop me at any point just because I look foreign. Yeah. Which is how that law was written. So so America, it's just, it has a really bad reputation. But I feel that America needs to take and I feel we do a good job as American society. We take responsibility for our own actions, but our president does need to, and he does. The man or woman, so will be at some point. They do mark the tone for the attitude of America, how America overall feels about anything, whatever it might be. Yeah. You have a president that is known for just creating chaos and turbulence and discord. America is going to be confused. You have a president that maybe doesn't have the strongest policies, but it's a person that unifies, a strong leader, a strong person with speech and connecting to the public. Yeah, America is going to be a little bit more connected. The person holding the rank of presidency has a huge responsibility on setting the tone for America, and we're confused right now as a nation.
Well, yeah. So on that, a friend of mine had the best description of the 2016 election that I've heard. The 2016 presidential election was a devastating defeat for the Democratic Party and a devastating victory for the Republican Party.
Right? Yeah. It's like, oh,
You know,
we have
so
this is our guy. Yeah.
yeah. So, well, we had a community organizer from Chicago, president for 2 terms. We have, New York real estate developer, maybe 1 or 2 terms. We'll see. Sooner or later, we need a unifying president.
Right.
You know?
Exactly.
Yeah, because you're absolutely right. They can set a tone, and I was hopeful that Mr. Trump would do something meaningful with taxes. I don't love the bill, but I think it's more
It's
pro
heading the
growth.
right path. Yeah.
But I don't like, for example, I read today in the paper that that he's going to slap tariffs on steel. That's just goofy. I don't like the tone on immigration. I do think, that he's taken a step toward what some people call amnesty. And you mentioned SB 10. To me, the state governments are arguing with the federal government to fix immigration. And by fix that, it means that we should have a set of rules that are plain and obvious. Nobody should cross the Sonoran Desert, for God's sakes, to try and get in here to improve their family.
Right.
They should have a 5-star hotel on the Mexican side, a 5-star hotel. They should cross at the border with, this is a solvable problem. We need people to come. Many people wanted to come, and now it's less, but we can fix that at the federal level. So SB 10 was stupid in the way because it was like Arizona was trying to get criticism at the federal level, and forgot that implementing it was going to be a nightmare and a headache.
Correct. Yeah.
So, bottom line, we need these people, like it or not. We need them. We should welcome them. We should treat them as human beings
With dignity. Correct.
with
yeah.
dignity. Do not cross the Sonoran Desert. That is dangerous. And if you're sneaking around, that's a sign that we have not corrected our policies yet.
Right.
They should have no fear. Come cross at the border legally. Have it clear. Not everybody who comes from Mexico wants to be a U.S. citizen. Maybe they want to. I had my eyes opened from some of my students at Lourdes Catholic High School in Nogales, Arizona, which, as you know, is right on the border with Nogales, Mexico. And I went down there to visit the school because these are online students, but I wanted to visit them and meet them because it was only like an hour drive or so. So we met, and they were very active in border justice causes there, and they took me to the border crossing. They showed me, Dr. H, I cross the border, 10 times, 15 times a week. My aunt lives there, my uncle lives there,
Right.
My parents are there.
A lot of those kids are people that are their parents are Mexican nationals. They come over, they're birthed here, they
Yeah.
give birth here, and then they go back. Right.
Yeah.
And their tide is to Mexico, but they want to receive a better education, so they come over and
They
get
work
it,
at Costco or whatever, and then they go home. Why shouldn't a person be able to do that? Why can't we have little ID cards that boom, hi, how are you? Know the
Right.
crossing guard by name or so. Why not?
I think a lot of it is the fear of immigrants taking advantage of our social benefits, right?
Okay.
Putting unnecessary tax on receiving health care, putting a tax on welfare and food stamps, whatever it is, which I think that there's unfairly a perception that it's your immigrant person that comes in and immediately applies for food stamps and all that stuff. Well, statistically, it's not, and you could go online and figure that out that it's not, but it's just a very poisonous idea that gets spread out without any fact check whatsoever.
Absolutely correct, and that's exact. So the perception is that they're trying to come over and freeload.
Right.
And the reality is exactly as you say, and this is documented in economic study after economic study about the net costs of immigrants. Immigrants are much less likely to take advantage of welfare and benefits than the native population. So,
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
And if it's in a study,
no,
Jesus,
yeah. William Simon, The Economics of Immigration. I mean,
Right.
and this is not a one-off study. It's a lot of studies that show that. But somehow the perception gets out there that,
But I think again, it goes if the leaders of our country present that fact, it's just going to get repeated. And honestly, that's where I think it comes from. I think this comes from government leaders. I want to move this into martial arts, but I want to finish with that because I have a lot of discussions about economics and how one version of the economic policy of America benefited ones but not others. And if you had to pick the economic model from presidents in the past, and we'll go back to, for example, one of the most revered, Reagan, right?
Okay.
Reaganomics, right?
Yep.
You had Reagan, you had Bush, you had Clinton, you had Obama, and now you have Trump. You have five. Going back and seeing how every model of economy affected and shaped America. Is there one that you favorite over the other? And if you had to pick an element from one and mix match and say, you know what, if we combine the idea of credit from Reagan, based with the policies of growth and bringing industries back into the United States from Trump, which one would you favorite the most? It's a big question.
It is. Well, what I admire about President Ronald Reagan was that he paid lip service. He didn't always do it, but he paid lip service to the values and principles that I think were important to talk about. He was also funny. Even his opponents,
super intelligent.
Yeah, even his opponents, chuckled when he was, and he said that government isn't the solution, government is the problem. Oftentimes,
Yeah.
and that kind of stuff. I think a thing about the Clinton presidency that I remember is what a fortunate guy he was to be in that office at the time that the Soviet Empire collapsed. And that released so much, in terms of the peace dividend. Everything was different until, 9/11. But that was really a fortunate time. The other thing I admire about both Reagan and Clinton, Reagan was courageous in the sense of standing up to Gorbachev and to the Soviet Empire. And he worked with the Pope. He met with the Pope in Anchorage, Alaska, to figure out how can we really win the Cold War. So I think Reagan had courage when it counted. Clinton had courage when it counted too. When he lost the midterm elections and the Newt Gingrich guys and he lost the House and all that, he said, "Okay, I got to be bipartisan. I gotta work with these people."
Yeah.
And I thought that was courageous. And he even opposed his party with NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement. And many Democrats abhorred that. A lot of union leaders didn't want that to come. But he said, no, I think this is going to benefit the country, to open up borders and in a way that makes sense for Canada, Mexico, and the United States. Does it have to be updated today? Maybe. I don't know all the technical issues. But I thought what we need is, in terms of a national leader, is somebody who says, no, this is correct. This is right. That's wrong. And here's what we're going to do. Boom. Okay. We can get behind that. Reagan did that with the Soviet Union, facing him.
He did that even at the domestic level. There's a very powerful video of there's a protest at a college.
Yeah.
And there's the protest. It's led by a teacher, and Reagan scolds him. Have you seen that?
No.
Oh, it's so
I
powerful.
want to see it.
It's so powerful.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of like a silly protest. I don't remember all the details, but Reagan scolds the teacher on what his role is as an instructor, and he tells him, "It's like, this kids are misguided by your behavior, and shame on you for behaving that way."
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
it was so powerful. It's
cool.
so powerful. What's up?
I was just seeing if you want to pull it up.
No, that's fine. That's fine. We'll show you at the end. Oh, it's so powerful.
Yeah.
It's so powerful.
Oh, I want to see it.
But he did that. He did that. He had that courage where I feel Trump, in a less polished way, he comes out and kind of lashes out against people that oppose him. People that, I shouldn't say that oppose him, but people that present a problem. It's. I wish he was a little bit more polished. I know he's not a politician, but
No.
yeah, he's not, and that poses a problem. But
Yeah, we'll see. Maybe the man will grow in the office. That's what I'm hoping and praying for, because he's there, and we
not
got
going
him.
anywhere. Yeah.
And it's only 1 year in, so I hope that he grows. But one thing that Mr. Trump has done that I sort of enjoy, because the politically correct stuff got a little bit out of hand.
Too
I thought.
ridiculous.
Where you didn't want to offend anybody.
Everybody was offended already. You didn't have to offend them. It was
And Mr. Trump doesn't seem to care much about that.
Right.
And I kind of like that, because maybe we can.
pendulum is swinging back the opposite, where we're starting to get, okay, that's ridiculous. That
Yeah.
the fact that you want to be offended over this, no, we're not doing that. So it's phenomenal. I like that the pendulum swing back, because when it really went all the way over here, where everybody was offended, masculinity was offensive now.
No,
like
yeah.
it's, come on, man, But I want to move into martial arts.
Oh, yeah.
You are a lifelong martial artist. What's your background on
So
that?
far.
Whoa. Well, I want to start this, and I'll let you do your background, but this is the benefit of being a lifelong martial artist. And I know you're a super humble person, but you were doing CrossFit at one point, and you were ranked in your events at the national world level.
Well.
Come on, just drop it.
Okay, send it. The yeah, I really got Carl got me into CrossFit. He said, "Mom, Dad, you got to do this." And we looked at it, and I said, "Oh, that would have been so awesome, 30 years ago or 40 years ago now. But I can't do it now." And then I discovered there was a master's program, so I competed in the master's program. And qualified in the regionals, the sectionals, and whatever, and then went to the international games in Irving, California in 2011. And
Yeah.
I was ranked 14th in the world
Jesus Christ, man. You're a savage.
out of 20, I think.
That is no, but that's no. See, you're being modest again, but that is phenomenal.
It was a
and
lot of
that
fun.
only can be achieved through the mind of a person that sees the world through martial arts, right? Where it's, if your student asks you a question that you don't know the answer to, what do? You go gain knowledge, right? If you're presented with a challenge, you very smartly approach it, and through the concept of martial arts, it's not football. Martial arts is not football, where you just kind of run at the challenge and hope that it falls down. It's, you're going to craft it. You're going to craft your approach, and you're going to do it. You're going to defeat it through whatever means necessary. But we had done a couple of privates, because you come from a karate background, and you wanted to merge a little bit of the ground, the takedowns, the kicks, and the punches. And we were doing some combinations of takedowns based on a punch, takedowns based on a kick, and we're not gonna reveal your age. You're ageless. People will know that you're thousands of years old. But the way you were assimilating the knowledge, and just absorbing the knowledge, and just performing the moves, and even just troubleshooting, because we talked about, like, wrestling, you could wrestle till you're 90 years old. You just have to wrestle smartly, right? So we talked about this, like, our knees have no business touching the ground. We can't get back up, we're done.
Yeah.
But we can still wrestle differently and smartly. And the way you were moving at your age, which is still a young man, but at your age, a lot of people start to pull back and not want to be involved in martial arts to the degree that you're involved in. Was phenomenal. And later on I went and talked to my family about this, and I even brought it up during a class, where I said, the way you live your life, and your health, and your your how full of life you are and an energy. It's a byproduct of living a productive life through martial arts and knowledge. You know, so
Well, my memory of one of those events was that what a skilled instructor who has an overall perspective of the pieces of the martial arts. You know, how a striking art like karate can fit in and complement and work with grappling. So I was amazed at the clarity of instruction that
thanks,
you
man.
provided. Yeah, I mean, and that's a gift and a skill that is developed with time. So and knowledge based. So that made it easy. That made it.
it's easy when you have a good student.
Yeah.
You know. But how long? What was your background? How long have you been practicing martial arts?
Well, me along with everybody at the time was kung fu fighting in the early 70s. You know, I was
Right.
at
Where was that? What
This
city?
was in Madison, Wisconsin, which is the
Okay.
capital of Wisconsin. Midori and I were were undergraduate students there, and Bruce Lee's Enter the Dragon came out. You know, we saw that.
Everybody was like, "I want to do that."
Yeah, I want to do that. It looked cool. The thing about it is that you just wanted to do that stuff, and I didn't know anything. So, and Madison was just full of martial arts. So I started in Shorin-Ryu Karate, which is that Okinawa. That was a rough and tumble. That was kind of a brawler club,
Right.
And that was tough. Then I tried Taekwondo. It was too expensive. Couldn't do that.
Really?
Then I found Shotokan, which it had about 40% women.
Right.
Back in the 70s, so that was unusual. Most of it was guys.
Revolutionary.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And it was good. It was an interesting system. You know, about half kicks, half punches and upper body techniques. So I just stuck with that because I don't have a good imagination.
This
No.
will do. Yeah.
And it's funny because you sort of come in and out, or I came in and out sometimes of karate because we have different instructors, different regions, and so on. And I wondered, what's the key to keeping healthy and fit as much as possible in this society?
Not this. Not
Yeah.
this. I'll tell you that.
And I thought for a while that CrossFit was it, but CrossFit is a really cool system. I like it. It's created very positive fitness trends, I think, for the most part. Okay, the coaching, is as good as the individual who puts time and effort into
Right.
it. So there's a variety in the quality of coaches. I think people who don't know much about fitness and anatomy and diet, pretending that they are experts, and they're not.
So it's
But
a
what
course that they take and they get certified and then they go teach.
I took
and
the
and all of a
certification.
sudden you're after a 1 week course you're teaching people how to do Olympic lifting.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Right,
That's
yeah.
the problem with it. But the genius is, he didn't care about that. He said, I'll give the workouts away. This is Greg Glassman, another American entrepreneur, a gymnast guy. And he put some pretty cool things like rigorous exercises against the clock. And, like Fran, which is one of the benchmark workouts. It's 21, 15, 9, as fast as you can go, 21 repetitions of pull-ups and thrusters,
Right.
with 95 pounds. Brutal exercise. You're totally gassed after that. But, I think my fastest time was 7 minutes, 58 seconds. I felt like king of the world. King of the
Yeah.
world. No, SEALs do that. Yeah. Well, they do Fran in like under 3 minutes. I mean, it's ridiculous, those guys. And then they say, well, maybe we should do 5 Frans or something.
Oh, Jesus.
So, but I got to the end of my CrossFit rope when I said, ultimately, this is the sport of working out. And it would be like you in a class. Oh, okay, we're going to roll, we're going to stretch, we're going to do some push-ups, get the heart rate up, and then we're going to go home.
Right.
That's what CrossFit is.
You're getting really good at throwing the ball at the wall.
Yeah, exactly.
That's it. Yeah.
So to me, CrossFit said, I got to do something else. I got to go back to martial arts. And your inspiring example of jiu-jitsu, the community of learners that you've built here, and have assembled, and people from all walks of life coming in, seeking knowledge, seeking to improve themselves. The thing too about martial arts, and I imagine it's true of jiu-jitsu, is it's like not a sport, not an activity that cuts. You know, you don't know. Like we were talking about immigrants, we can't know who's going to be the next Elon Musk or so.
Right.
We can't know.
It's a process of evolution.
To me, one of the gifts of a great instructor like yourself, and I mean that, is you see people come through the door and you somehow, I don't know how you do it, because you see the potential. And how do you see potential? What are the signs? Is that kid going to be good in 10 years if he sticks with it? Is that girl going to be a fierce competitor? Is she going to be good at...
There's levels that people are going to achieve. And a lot of it is, depending obviously the shape that they come in, their mindset, their physical makeup. In jiu-jitsu, if you have a guy that's short and stuck, he's going to be really good at a certain brand of jiu-jitsu. We have one student that is skinny and long. I mean, his hip bone starts here, and his
God.
leg is like here. So you start foaming at the mouth as an instructor. It's like, oh, this kid is going to be great at triangles and omoplatas and spider guards and stuff. But I'm under the firm belief that people can be taught everything, and there's there's alpha males in the sport that kind of want to like constantly bump chests with people, and they're you see these teachers, you can't teach hard, or they have dog in them, and you can't teach that. It's like, yes you can, to a certain level, and through a lot of trial and error, and just keep trying by both you and the student. You can teach hard. You can teach this person to become decades of fear and limitations. So I welcome everybody that comes in and they're willing to try. Dude, I'm gonna be there right there with you. And I always tell them, it's whatever you want to accomplish, I'm there with you in the path to accomplish that.
And that's what I like about the martial arts, that
Right.
that fact that if it were basketball, you'd look for a certain height. I mean,
You're 5'2", get out. Yeah.
But in jiu-jitsu, you don't know, but you have a hunch. You have a sense about like you say, the person's work ethic, the time that they put into it, and so on. What I find very intriguing about martial arts now, my training in it, is I'm getting to the point where I'm starting to understand what Shotokan karate is, what it isn't. It's taken a long time. I'll tell you how old I am. I'm 67.
Jesus.
So
savage.
So it's just starting to understand it, and it's complicated. Is it, so why do we punch the air? What if you punch the air and that's all you do in your training? You're not a karateka. You're not. You have to hit something. You have to hit a makiwara board. This is just
right, the board with the pad. Yeah.
Sensei Sugiyama back in Chicago in the day said, there were 80 of us in the clinic, and he said, raise your hand if you have makiwara that you punch every day. And maybe 3 people raised their hand. He said, oh, I have so few karateka in here. Meaning you
cut so deep.
Training, training, has to be broad-based. It has to address deficiencies. It has to be, you can't fool yourself into thinking that in a confrontation, a punch in the air is going to do anything for you. It's probably not. And I'm getting to the point that I know that. And like this South African man who came in Phoenix, Malcolm Dorfman in 9th Dan, he's a very, very powerful guy. He was great. He was a very good instructor.
Is this the guy that said that is not karate?
Yeah.
Right? Because
he said
it was the way the way the group was sparring, where he said that is not karate. You wouldn't put anybody on the ground with the way you're doing it.
That's what he said. Yeah.
Oh.
He said, I got to be honest with you. And he said it in his South African accent.
Which I love it. I
got to be honest with you. I'm not seeing any techniques this afternoon that would put your man down. It wouldn't.
Wow.
And he said, I'm just trying to bring you some reality. So and that instantly elevated the intensity of the training because he's being truthful with us. We sense that he's not.
And there was a point I feel where karate, being kung fu, another taekwondo, another disciplines. I feel there was a point where it was reality based training,
Yeah.
and it was when at the time there was full contact being allowed in classes and sparring and bag work done in karate and it moved away at the sake of profitability. How can we make this profitable? But it's also a product of Western world, and I use that. I use the example of Krav Maga coming to America, where Krav Maga in Israel has no belts whatsoever. It's based on performance based. How are you doing? Blah blah blah. But it comes to America, and then America, the Western world goes, well, I can't just be a white belt. I need a rank. I need to be able to brag to my friends that I'm something within this world. Just can't, it's a different reality. And next thing you know, there's ranks, and that's one of the reasons that I feel that karate is often mocked. It's because it creates a false sense of reality of security for their students because now you have a 11-year-old kid that is a black belt.
Yeah.
No, it's like no, you're not. And the problem again is like for the sake of profitability is now they're starting to offer jiu-jitsu. So I've had kids that come in here with rank in jiu-jitsu from other local karate academies where they're offering jiu-jitsu, and this kid comes in as a yellow belt, and my white belts are killing him.
Yeah.
And the father, it's sitting there with the father and the mother. They're really angry, and I can't tell if they're mad at me or mad at my students, mad at their son, or mad at the other instructor.
The other instructor.
But they're like, and I had one parent say, "It's like I don't understand. He's so good over there, So, and I think that like again, I think the hunger for that profit is what diluted karate, because at some point, more. Law enforcement agencies throughout the nation were bringing these karate instructors in there to show their police officers how to handle themselves in confrontations.
Yeah, and I think a large part of that, the Shotokan went through this, is the conflict or the tension between sport karate and traditional karate, the kind of hurdy stuff. That if a confrontation happens, you got 1 or 2 seconds to use a technique and then move away or get out of there.
Right.
Or expect to go down to the ground.
Right, exactly.
In which case...
which at that point, you often hear the phrase, I'm dead.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
No, the fight just started.
Yeah. So, but sport karate, it's just continuous, and it's like the difference between jiu-jitsu and wrestling. When one time on the mat, I tried some wrestling because I wrestled in high school, and I remember getting the guy on the back, and he said, and I thought, okay,
we're done.
We're kind of done here.
Yeah.
Now. Where's the bell?
Where's the championship belt?
Yeah. And it kept going, and it was like he's gone now, and now he's on top of me, and so it's fascinating in that way. But so you're right about rank. To me, rank is at my age, it's worth pursuing, not because it signifies I'm a badass, but it signifies like milestones in training of understanding the system. Does that mean I could defend myself? Probably against a woman my age with a walker or something.
Knock her out. You just,
but if it was life and death, I think the reflexes would serve me well.
Right.
Would I prevail? I would work hard to prevail in that situation. But I hope I never have to be in that situation.
I hope so too, man. It's violence in America, man. It's just weird, But I think a lot of it it's the posture of the person, right? And that's one of the things that martial arts brings to the person. It's number one, it's you don't have to walk around bumping your chest into people to prove that you have confidence, but there's a certain way a martial artist will stand based on their knowledge as to compared to a person that walks into a room and already looks victimized by the situation.
Yeah. The other thing, if I may say, a benefit, a social benefit of martial arts is the culture has gotten to the point where it doesn't quite know what to do with young men. What messages should young men in particular get? And it's a mixed message that we're sending,
Right.
And so, with recent events in Parkland, Florida, and so on, the tragedy, people scratching their head, is it guns? Is it mental health? Is it... One of the things that I see at my time of life is it's part of human nature to have murder in your heart. We got murderous rage, some of us. And the question is, what do you do with that? You don't act on that. You don't. Part of being a man in this context means you harness those demons, you channel them, you work hard, you work in a martial art, so you understand the value of competition, of winning sometimes, losing other times, but keeping
and accepting
at it,
that, right?
keeping at it.
Yeah.
So, will martial arts be the solution to school shootings? No, I don't think so. But we have to come to grips with the fact that some people have murder rage in their hearts, and you got to be aware of that. You got to take steps to prevent it, to recognize it, that and just to prevent it, because it's so tragic.
I think as human beings, we have the instinct of wanting to conquer something. We want to conquer obstacles, challenges, careers, whatever that is.
Yeah.
But I think as we talked about earlier, the society, I think it's one way so far that we've really taken every outlet for our youth to really express themselves in that regard. We're not putting our kids in wrestling. We're not putting our kids in jiu-jitsu. We're not putting our kids in a sport where there's a hard line of between victory and loss, and how to deal with that is, the mockery of everybody gets a trophy,
Yeah.
But I do think also that there is the problem with it's not a gun problem, it's a mental health problem. Every single one of these kids was on some sort of hardcore medication for mental illness.
Yeah.
But also there's something that causes that is majority of those kids. There's always that story always comes out of all these kids were bullied at some point, and but then there's this other commercial that I saw on Facebook, and I found that so true. And I thought about it long and hard before bringing it up in a podcast. But I wondered, but it's just I couldn't find a counter argument to it. All these kids were on some sort of hardcore mental medication. All these kids at some point had suffered of bullying. None of those kids were wrestlers.
I didn't know.
So the point is, you've never heard of a kid that wrestled or boxed or did this and did that and then went on to become a victim of bullying.
Yeah.
And bullying is going to continue to happen. I was bullied. It just continues to happen. But what do? You can't disappear. You can't continue to run away from your problems.
Nope.
You face it one way or another. And a lot of times it's you encounter it, you fight back, and then what happens. But there's a growth progress that comes from that. But it's we got to do something. And I think a lot of it, like you said, is we need to provide an outlet for our kids to continue to be to be hungry for that conquer, right?
Yeah, and
and our women too. It's
of course.
we need to we can't frown upon women training martial arts. In fact, we have one of the largest women program, with my wife being the brown belt, being the instructor. But a lot of times you see the change in these women where they go from a lifelong of, you want to play sports, go play volleyball.
Yeah.
Something like that.
No, I remember, speaking of the positive benefits of training, committing to training, is I remember when I started, I had a nasty temper. Short fuse, nasty temper. And one of the benefits picking up, how to live your life in martial arts training, it seems to me, is like you said, you put yourself into it, and you try to separate the ego, so you're not tied up with always winning and prevailing and victory. Right. So you experience hard work, you experience setbacks, defeats. That took him like 10 seconds to submit me or something. Yeah. But you keep at it, and you harness aggression. You harness, murder is just wrong. It's just not good. And in a culture that's saying, well, we're not comfortable with displaying the 10 Commandments, so we want to get rid of those, and so, and then saying, well, what is a family? Well, mom, dad, kids. Maybe not. Maybe that might hurt somebody. We were talking about, politically correct.
Right.
We can't define a family. Yeah. Strong families, I think, are critical. And strong families, strong fathers and mothers who would say, you know what, our kid should be in wrestling, our kid should be in judo,
right,
or some grappling thing, or some striking art,
or boxing,
or boxing,
anything when you get hit,
yeah.
Anything when you get hit,
You understand what it means to be hit in the face, as our dear brother Ruben would say.
Move your head,
rather than move for you.
Right, Ruben.
Exactly.
Great coaching, Ruben.
Yes.
Yeah. No, that's so true. So let's finish with this, because I think you hit up what message do we leave behind, right? So you haven't lived a life of education, a life of martial arts. If you were to kind of like make a closing statement on what you want to leave behind for the kids in the future, what are your closing thoughts? What gift do you want to give to the world?
Oh, just that idea of passion that we talked about right at the beginning. What is your passion? Find your passion and harness it and go with it, and keep an open mind. Be excited about learning new things, because that's I think what will spell success for a life well lived is a person who has an open mind. Who enjoys learning new things, no matter for what purpose, just to learn new information. Right. It's easy to get information, and don't fear hard work, because that's what pays off. That's when the going gets tough, and you really are up against a wall, and you find out who you are, who your friends are, and what's important. And so don't don't avoid hard work. I guess that would be
beautiful.
A message.
Sir,
okay.
It was a pleasure.
Okay.
It was a pleasure.
It was a pleasure. Thank you very, very much.
We'll have to do it again.
Taking some time. I look forward
Absolutely,
to it.
man.
Cool.
Thank you, sir.